I was born in Krakow. Yes, I was born in Krakow in 1983, but I spent my childhood mostly in Nowy Sącz and Stary Sącz, which is about 100 kilometers from Krakow in the south of Poland. And first I grew up in Stary Sącz where my grandmother lived, you know, till I was 11 years old when we moved to Nowy Sącz, and I went to music school in Nowy Sącz, and that was my beginning, yes, as a musician. I remember that I was very impressed, especially by art. I love paintings. My uncle was a painter, and I was very touched by the music of the Beatles, and that was a very important point in my life when I think I was 8 or 9, when my mother recorded for me. There was a video about John Lennon, Imagine, and I had fallen in love in that movie. I was watching every day, and that was the beginning of music. And my mother bought me a guitar, and I started to play guitar, and I learned by myself, yes. And later I went to the teacher. I met some teacher in Stary Sącz. He showed me a couple of chords. That was the beginning, but I remember I started to be also interested in classical music at that time. My grandfather from Stary Sącz, he had a cassette tape about Johann Strauss, because he loved Viennese waltzes. And I started to be very much interested also in classical music. And I went to the shop and I bought music by Mozart. I remember it was Turkish March, and Chopin, that was a Harasiewicz recording of Polonaise A-flat major, and mazurkas. And from that time, I started to be really focused on classical music, yes. I had fallen in love. And that was my whole life. I was very sick that time. I spent a lot of time in the bed because I had asthma, and I couldn't go so many times to school. I missed a lot of lessons. And so I had a keyboard next to my bed, and I was practicing all the day, but I was very happy about that. And I had also guitar, and that was all I remember very, very special. I always telling my friends special thing from my childhood, that even when I was so sick, I went out from my home to go for the piano lessons, and without telling this to my mother. My father played, of course, my father played guitar and piano. He finished elementary music school in Szczawnica, which is not far away from Nowy Sącz, but it's also in the south of Poland, because my father is from Szczawnica, my mother is from Krościenko, and they met in the high school there. But my mother didn't play any instrument, my mother not. My father played, but my mother loves to paint. My mother took me many times for a concert when we were in Nowy Sącz, Stary Sącz, for the piano recitals, and because most of the time I spent with my mother, because my father was in Germany. He moved to Germany as a doctor there, and he worked there, so that's why we most of the time spent with my grandmother and my mother. And I think they encouraged me, but somehow I know it was very hard for them when I was practicing a lot of. When we moved to the Nowy Sącz, I practiced a lot on the piano, you know, because I started quite late. In fact, I did my first elementary school in 4 years, and generally it takes 6 years, yes, because I came when I was quite late. They even suggested me to play guitar, you know, and so I went as a guitar player, but later I wanted to be a pianist, you know, so they decided, okay, I can study 2 instruments, piano and guitar, and later my major was piano, yes, and I practiced really a lot, especially also when I had a secondary school. I had to practice 6 hours per day, you know, so I was going to music school because it was very hard for my parents to listen all the time. We had a piano in the kitchen, you know.
Hello, so we are in Basztowa 9 at the music school when I was attending Żeleński Secondary Music School. So that's the building when I was going for my graduating for my piano class in Krakow, in Basztowa 9, Paper Street.
I remember when I was very, very young, I started always from Imagine. From this song, yes, and this song I played every day, you know, and my mother and my father And my grandmother, they couldn't stand that song, you know, because I was playing every day so many times. First on the guitar and later. I love also very much the songs. That was, in fact, first time in my life when I heard English, you know, and I learned Imagine, you know, and I learned that those texts by heart, you know, and I think this is a very also important song for all my life, you know, about imagination. This is something what I'm always searching, and I was always interested in my childhood. What I'm doing now is completely different. What I'm doing in music, everything is completely different. But I think we have some similar points in the terms of art. I think for John Lennon always was very important to write about daily life, you know? And he was also very true artist because he never wanted to lie, he just expressed himself. And in this term, I think I try to do the same. When I'm writing in classical music nowadays, I'm always thinking like it's a kind of diary about myself, even if I'm going sometimes in a difficult way. My field is music. I'm using notes. Painters are using colors, you know. Actors are using words. But in fact, we have something always very similar, that we share ourselves, our life. We wanna share with some others our feelings, yes, feelings, emotions, and thoughts, yes. So I think in this point, even if I'm contemporary artist, I'm maybe similar. I feel we are all like a big family, you know. I always think like that, and I think for sure for me as a composer, I feel my grandfather was like Górecki, Henryk Mikołaj Górecki. I really respect him very, very much, and of course Lutosławski, yes, from the modern artists, and Penderecki nowadays, yes. Those are three most important composers. But it's hard to me to tell who is the who is my famous, because I respect all of them. They are all different. You know why piano? Because on the piano I could feel more orchestra, I think. I could hear more instruments, and piano had a special, because piano has a very big range, yes, as you see. You know, so we have so many pitches and so many possibilities. We can use both hands. We can play chords, yes. We have 10 fingers, and I love the sound of the piano. And I was also always very impressed how many different kind of timbres we can find from piano. That sometimes you just play one instrument, but you can imagine the other instrument, all of the instruments from the orchestra. It's everything possible on the piano. And I love that sound, and I imagine my dream was to have a real piano when I was a child, but I have just a keyboard, yes. And but my father, in his hometown in Strawnica, he had the piano there. So I remember he promised me that he would like to move it, but it was so old Austrian piano, upright piano, that I remember we had to wait for 10 guys to take it out because it was so heavy, you know, so heavy. So I had to wait really a long time, but I was very, very happy when I got this piano. And when I got this upright piano, you know, it was like, it was my dream, you know. The dream came true, and I was practicing all the time, and I was searching the sounds. I love the sound because it's so different from keyboard. And I remember I spent a lot of time, even without knowing notes, just searching notes. I love to play sometimes. No, I was searching harmonies. I remember, sometimes I imagined that as a colors, whatever, and I was just searching. I was just playing in the piano. I was improvising. I remember. I was even if I play one sound, I was always listening the color of that. And I spent a lot of time of improvising, and it was the beginning. I remember that I had a very, very strong feeling. I didn't know that in music we have a relation between tonic and dominant. And I remember when I was a child, I just found some chord. I didn't know that I found a major chord. So I played the chord. And later I found that if I transpose this, and I remember that was the basic structure of the music, tonic and dominant. So I remember I compose. So that is just a basic thing, but I was so happy about that. You know, that is something very primitive. But it was like a journey in music, and I was searching that. I didn't know nothing about that. It was just like experience, improvisation experience. So I remember I was improvising on those two chords, so simple melodies or something. I mean, sometimes I'm waking up. It's many times what happens for me. I'm woke up, yes, and I have this sound. All I hear this accordion, for example, the other instrument. Okay, so it must be only this instrumentation. I don't like to write for the others. I have the sound, yes, in my hand. And that I'm trying, of course, to transform. I have to use my skills to develop the material. But sometimes I'm composing on the paper, yes, I'm making sketches on the paper when many times happens I need to have, for me, of course, for every composer is different, but for me it's very important to have a movement. So I love to walk. Or when I'm composing, when I'm stable, I'm not doing nothing, I can't compose. I must to have a movement of something, you know. I must to walk on the street. Even if I play on the piano, there is a movement of the sound or movement of the fingers, so also inspires me. I also love to compose when I'm in the train, the bus. Oh, it helps me a lot there. But when I was third year, as an exchange student, I went to Belgium, to Brussels, where I met my good friend, a conductor. He lived in the dormitory with me, next to me. Jan Palant, very good friend of mine from Prague. And he came to the States, you know, here to Carnegie Mellon with his professor. And I was in touch with him because we are very, very friendly. And I asked him, how is it going in the States? I would like to come here. And he suggested me, oh, Carnegie Mellon is a great school. He told me so many great things. So I applied to the school because of him. And I was accepted and I got full scholarship here. So that's how I came here, because I always felt that I would like to try go to the world where I can meet a lot of cultures. I like to meet people from the other cultures, you know, and I want to share my culture with the others, and I want to also take something from the others. I want to learn a lot, yes, in my life. So that's why I decided to come to the States, because of him. That's why I was thinking maybe to be a doctor, you know. I was thinking to be a doctor. I was talking to my father, and I was preparing for being a doctor, but there was a time when for 1 year, when I was 18 years old, that was a time where, in fact, that was the first year when I composed my first piece ever written. At that time, because I miss music so much, you know, and I didn't practice piano, and I always felt, oh, I can't live without that, because I was so connected with music. I practiced every day so many hours, and I didn't practice at all almost that time because I was preparing for being a doctor, yes. And that time I composed my first piece, and I realized, no, this is something that I must do in my life, because I can't live without music, you know. This is so, but I have to tell you, I'm happy. This was something very, very short that I composed. It was a novice song, yes. That was my last 4 year in the secondary music school. And my brother is a saxophone player. He was that time a saxophone player. First he played clarinet, and later he moved to the saxophone. And that was a kind of a piece which what was important piece, because also my aunt, who passed away that year, so I had a feeling that I want to write something for her. And that was a composition competition at school. And this time I won this competition, and I composed a kind of I would like to tell jazz. I don't know exactly which style, but the beginning was something like that. Saxophone started, I played with him. I played on the piano, my brother played on the saxophone. The starting was like this. I remember in the middle part was something, it was like a march, because I was thinking about march. I remember that was the middle part. That was this kind of music, this kind of that was the first written composition that I have ever did. And that time I remember my professor suggested me, maybe Jakub is in Polish, yes. Maybe you should be a composer, yes. Maybe not pianist. You always want to be a pianist, but maybe you should be a composer. And that was the beginning, because I and I decided, oh, maybe I should study musicology. So I have to tell you, I always feel wherever I am, or wherever music I'm writing, I'm always Polish, yes, inside. Yes. It doesn't matter if I write this music or if I contact with my parents from the other countries. I'm always with them, yes, or I'm always with my country. And if I write this music here, or if I write in Australia, it doesn't matter. I will probably write maybe similar note, but only in a different place. I can tell you that Wigilia in Polish, in English Christmas Eve, was always the most precious day on my year, because we have 12 dishes that time. As you know, we have a long traditions. And when my aunt lived, she was from Proscienko. I remember she was always trying to keep 12 dishes. And that was very important because you have 12 disciples. That's because of that. I think here in the States we don't have this tradition, because you don't have this. So what is the way? You have to, of course, you have to have a kind of cabbage. You need to have a borscht, Polish borscht, yes. And you need to have a lot of many kinds of dumplings. And you have to have a fish, many kinds of fish, yes. And in total, you must have 12 dishes. And after that, we sing carols. And that was important also for me. I remember I was watching some of my photos now for the 30s that my mother gave me, that after that supper, yes, we were singing Polish carols, yes. And that was the time when many times my father played the guitar, I played on the piano, my brother played on the clarinet, and my aunt sang some carols. Sometimes we just make instrumental arrangements, and sometimes sometimes just solo, vocal solo. She had very nice voice. She had a nice voice. And after that, after singing, we gather. We had a Christmas tree. Yes, we have a Christmas tree, and we have a lot of gifts there. Yes, so we gather together, and each of the person is offering some present to the other member of the family. So that was always very special time. This is a time when we share our love, and you could really see it, and it's a very very important time for all of the Polish. And after that, after the present time, we are going for mass, 12 o'clock, at midnight. Yes, so we were lucky because in my home in Nowy Sącz, in my area there is no church, but for Christmas time they are arranging a special cottage. You know, I would like to the kind of a cottage, and there we gather at 12 o'clock, and there's coming a priest, and we are singing carols, yes, and we have a mass that. And it's important, and we always try to go, even it was so cold. I remember like 7 years ago, it was like -20. It was so cold, but we went there. And it was very, very, of course, very beautiful experience. And next day, we have 2 days of Christmas in Poland, not like here, that first day we generally spend at home, and second day we are visiting the other members from the family. Yeah. Najciszy. Wśród nocnej ciszy. Like that, yes. I like the song a lot. I also used this song in one of my pieces last year for a string quartet. This is just in just a couple of notes. I used my string quartet in the fourth movement. When I use Landscape of Polish Cathedral for string quartet, when I use it they were whistling that, and I use as a kind of cantus firmus technique in that piece. And because I was composing that piece during Christmas time. You know, for example, Chopin also, when he was abroad, when he composed his Scherzo B minor, yes, this one. And in the middle part of the Scherzo, there is a Polish carol. For sure you know that Polish carol. Yes, this is a middle part. Only once Chopin had a kind of quotation, yes, and that was this Luajże Jezuniu. That was so. This is like you are abroad and you are trying to connect with your. Carols are always very important because it reminds you your homeland. Yes, I feel, yes. So that's why also I use this incipit of Wśród nocnej ciszy as a kind of memories, because I spent my Christmas here in Pittsburgh. So I just use this couple of notes, yes, in my piece for string quartet. Yes, this is part of the tradition and culture. Yes, statues of Mary. Yes, Mary is a lot of composers compose also many pieces. Like there is a piece by Polish composer Krystyna Moszmańska-Naza, polskie Madonny, Polish Madonnas, because we have so many Madonnas in Poland, Częstochowa and the others, and Mary is a kind of a patron of all of the Poland, and that's why in all of the village you can find saints, sculptures, saints or Mary, yes, and they have their own, and they pray, especially in May. They like to pray at 6 or 7 o'clock. They have a special meetings, and they have kind of they pray that time at 6, 7, yes, May and June. So when you go through Poland, May and June in the villages, you can see that a lot of people are gathering around those, yes, small sculptures, and they are praying. This is a part of culture. I like it a lot. Yes, I like it a lot. This is a really Polish landscape. Because before coming here to the Pittsburgh, I was a pianist in a ballet in Krakow, in the opera and ballet in Krakow. But probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to move to the other state, yes, and I have to Kentucky, and I will be there for a year to teach, yes, and I might also sometimes play piano, yes, in the church or in the different places, and I will try to prepare myself maybe for DMA in the future. I'm thinking still about DMA or PhD doctor, yes, in music, but this year I will try to also improve my written English essays, and I would love to in the future share with music. I would love to teach music. Yes, that's what I would love to do, and of course I will write my music. Yes, I will compose, but it's hard, of course, to survive from composition. And if you ask most of the composers, sometimes they have to do the other things. Yes, because composition is not like a profession. You know, sometimes I'm thinking to write for the theater. Yes, I like a lot of theater or film music. Yes, I studied a little film scoring and theater music in Łódź, and audiovisual art, and life will show me. I'm always thinking like that. I can have a kind of ideas what I would like to do, but it always changes. And of the time of period, we have generally the same like in the States, Friday and Saturday concerts, the same in Krakow and in Warsaw, Friday, Saturdays concert. But here sometimes they have Sunday also like 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock during the day. It's completely different. Generally, we don't have this in Poland, that we have concert during like 12 or 2 o'clock. No, we all generally have concert, philharmonic concert in the evenings. Yes, I was surprised when I could see a concert Sunday, 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. Wow. When I was a child, I think nobody encouraged me to be a musician. And this is maybe what I'm thinking. I will try to do my best to show them what is music, yes. And I try to show them love to music. And I try to make them interested in that. But I don't know if I will try to encourage them to be a musician, because they must feel by themselves, and nobody can encourage and tell them that they should do it. If they can live, there was one Polish composer who told that if you can live without composition, then don't compose. But if you can't live without that, then you must compose. But if I have students, I try to find something what fits to them, And if I will see that they want to do it, then I can show them more. But this is a question that they have to answer by themselves, I think. If they want to follow this way, like me, to be a composer or a teacher, every person must feel by personally. I ask many times why I'm doing this, but composition is my real experience of life. So when I'm walking on the street, when I'm talking to you, yes, everything gives me a kind of energy, and I would like to impression, yes, and I would always like to put it in the abstract way. So when I compose, I use sounds which are generally abstract. They are not like languages direct. I'm trying to maybe I'm transforming something from my real life to the music world. And something how I like many times also to see what happens around me and make a comments or reflections on my ways, how I think, how does it work. Sometimes there are so many things that I can't express by words, you know, and I think I can express better in music, you know. Maybe this is me in music. It's exactly me, and what I'm talking to you now, maybe it's not exactly me, you know. In music I can express better. Yes, so that's why I'm composing, and this is a part of my. Something, and I'm trying to play on the piano. Yes. It was. I always wanted to go a little bit from. I want to study with professor from the other cultures, that might have different point of view of music. That was important for me in Belgium because professors were very focused on rhetorics, and the way, but baroque rhetorics, and the way how he was composing and analyzing the music was a little different. How I learned in Poland, we were different way, different method. So it was also very important for me. And then I came here and I met Professor Rezavali, who is composing Iranian music. So she showed me, of course, the world of the Persian music. Yes, microtones, tunings. He's a really specialist of that. And it was also very important for me for maybe making my music more rich, I would like to tell, and maybe more effective in some way. He's also a very experienced composer. But to generalize, I think from each of the person I learned something different, and each of the person made me see music from the different point of view, you know. And it also helps me when I compose different pieces. Sometimes I have different reflections. Oh, in this piece I would like to do like this, and then this method helps me from this composer. I'm trying to search something that can help me to be better, yes, and to help the others to be maybe better, to find something new. And this is what I think what I was trying to learn from all of the professors, and they were always so kind and so lovely person. And so many things have changed in my life because after graduating from CMU, I think it was May 2013. I moved to New York, first of all. That was a big move. But for a while, I was in Kentucky. For 1 year, I moved to Kentucky. And I got married a couple of months ago. I was in Poland also, like for a little bit, like for a couple of months between the transition between moving to New York, because my wife, she got a job here in New York. And then I also started teaching at New York Conservatory of Music. It was in 2015, last year, right? So we decided to be in New York, and we actually moved here and settled. We settled in Queens. Now we live in Astoria. So it was a really big move for me. And so now we became somehow like a New Yorkers, so the life got changed. But it got very excited, and so actually many changes in my life, getting married, moving to New York, and teaching, and working with other people. Also, I wrote a little some music for the movies, and for the I think I also performed pretty much recently a lot on the piano. So it was pretty busy time, yes.
Yeah.
What I learned, I think that in life is also very in music, well, particularly in music, like in art, is important experience. Experiencing things that sometimes we might think might work theoretically, but in practical they don't work. And also I learned in this 3 years, maybe, what's changed in my life is that we should enjoy all of the moments of our life, because this is something always really precious, and the life is a journey. We can plan things. Also, I think that because I never thought that I would, for example, move to New York. And what happened is that the life changed my plans. So it's unpredictable. You might have some plans, like in music, like in art. You might think, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. But later life change your plans, and you also always have to go to the flow of the life, of the reality, you know. And I think that's what I learned. I think I shouldn't plan that much. I have some idea for the future, but life will always go in its own way, and I never know where it's gonna bring me, you know. I think that's something very interesting. This is like a journey of life and like a journey of art, you know. So you never know. There are things that you can predict, but there are certain things that is also like a mystery. You don't know where you're gonna be, you know. Also, I think it's very important for the artist is to have some response from the people. So like they will say, I like this one, or for example, you touch me, so I like it when people come to me and say, I like this one. It is always different for different composition, because I also feel each composition is individual. Like something different. I think about this piece differently, about this piece differently, about the other differently. So, and I think it's very important that I, as a composer, I communicate somehow with people. So I talk to the language of the sounds, you know. And these sounds they mean something today. For every person can have different meaning. That was so back in the ages. It was really long in the history. If we can see something, because everyone can see slightly differently. Because you know, each of the person can have different imagination and can imagine different things. Because music generally is abstract, where it is about the sound, but it's a language, and it expresses our emotions, feelings. And I was thinking, so it would be good to do something religious, something which will actually tell about my culture, where I come from, because religion and the culture are very unified in Poland, and the culture and religious things, they are going in the same directions. So I was thinking how to make some piece, from my perspective, to continue. Back in the ages, a lot of composers wrote the masses. Moniuszko wrote the Polish masses in Polish language, and nowadays in the 20th century, Wojciech composed a mass. Górecki started to compose a kyrie, but he did in Finnish, and also Krzysztof Penderecki composed a lot of also sacral music, including the requiem, Polish requiem. I feel, from my perspective, I meet with a lot of people from different countries. I have a lot of friends from around the world, from this country, the other, and they always inspire me. They are very inspiring for my imagination. And I also incorporate that to my work. So what I did, I took the Latin, because Latin, of course, for many years, Latin was the main language for the Polish Mass, you know. So I basic on the text of the Latin, Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, Benedictus, and Agnus Dei, plus I extended it to the text in English, because English is nowadays the language that I talk when the people communicate, composers, to the poems from the different parts of the world. So I use the text from the Eskimos. I use the text also, I use some Jewish prayers. I use also the text of the people from Africa, the people from Australia, generally about the nature, how they see the spirit, about the spirituality, you know. And I also, what I wanted to make there's important that I use there like a Tibetan bow. There's the instrument that they use in Asia. That is called a healing instrument, this bow, right? Singing bow. And also I use a kalimba from Africa, so a few very not often used instruments in the classical repertoire, in the classical instrumentation. But the main center is, of course, the voices and the organs. And organs represent the part of the church, right? Of the tradition of the church music. So this is a kind of a composition which is a kind of dialogue between like two worlds, and also the words of the. I was thinking to compose a piece when sacral and profanal will be a little bit distinguished. At the beginning of the piece, I had the idea I want to start a piece when the mass starts before the church. So what it starts at the really beginning, introduction of the piece, it's not very actually what happens inside the church. So there is not Kyrie Gloria, there is introduction. And at the end of the piece, there is also a moment when people leave in the church. This is like a church is like a sphere of the sacral moment, but around there, this is like a daily life, you know, something. So I want to also incorporate it with my piece. So I want to make a frames of those two, profanal and sacral in the middle. And inspiration, of course, for me, I was thinking my great Polish composer, also with whom I had a chance to meet in Poland, and who was teaching me instrumentation, Krzysztof Penderecki. When he was 33 years old, he's exactly 50 years older than I. He composed his Passion.
Jakub Polaczyk.
And actually, I finished this piece, I got married, and I dedicated this piece to my wife. This piece is dedicated to my wife. And I finished this in Rome. We went to Rome this summer too, and I also finished the piece, the last of the notes of the composition during the summer. I went to John Paul II house in Rome, and this is where I finished this piece. And I felt it was a very important moment for me, because when I was a student, when I studied composition in Krakow, I composed a piece for a choir, which actually won the John Paul II award. That was the John Paul II days. And I felt something really big. John Paul II was a really special, now saint, for the Polish culture. You know? Someone who was also the artist, you know, as you know. And I was thinking that I would like to go to this John Paul II house in Rome and finish my composition over there. So this is actually when I finished the entire piece. It was in Rome. I started, of course, I wrote it in New York. I was writing this for a couple of months and was thinking a lot of changes. It's a pretty extensive piece because it's around 45 minutes, 50 minutes long, you know, and this is also it incorporates some theatrical movements. What I would like to also add to this is that there will be an artist, Jasmine from Brooklyn, who is making a wooden bread. When my wife went for the exhibition some long time, and she said, "Oh look, Jacob, this is something. There is some artist who was going in a wooden bread, and it looks like a bread, and this is what I need for my composition." So instead of using the stones, that we're gonna use her. I asked her, she's gonna come tomorrow. Instead of using some wooden instrument, we are using the parts of the bread. And bread is a part of the instrument because it's sharing the breads. And this is one of the instruments I'm going to use from her wooden parts, but she didn't consider it as an instrument. But I was starting to play with that, and I was thinking, oh, it sounds good. I want to make it as an instrument. So she gave me permission. She's really very happy about that. She allows her to use her wooden bread. Then actually they're going to take first at the beginning of the piece after the introduction, and they're going to use this as a wooden instruments, but particular inspiration for this wooden sound was Theater No from Japan. I want to also have this kind of natural sound. So, and I was looking also for the sound to extend my this let's say this Polish tradition with the other culture. And I was looking for the sounds. I would have a wooden sound, something like this is not like that. This is a musical set of the composition. As you know, in the back in the history, like Haydn, Mozart, Coronation Mass, or Great Mass B minor. This is a musical composition. The set of the text from the Mass, but it's not like a real Mass, but it's a musical set. The history of the Mass, it's a really long and very interesting because there was a time when composers were commissioned back in the ages by the Pope to writing pieces during the ceremony of the Mass. So during when was a Kyrie, they were writing some movements. During Gloria, they were writing some movements. But later it became the independent composition which is performed outside the ceremony of the Mass. This is how my Mass is, but it has some elements, of course, with sharing the bread. I'm very happy. I like very much. I find myself I like very much to teach. I'm teaching at the conservatory. I have lectures, which are also about the composers nowadays and influenced by the composer from the back in the ages. I can call a series called Meeting the Masters of music. And I'm actually sharing always my thoughts, how the other composers from the past inspire the others. I have this open series of lectures that I launch at the school. I'm also teaching piano. I'm writing compositions to my students. So each of the particular students, I'm sometimes giving like particular exercises and small composition. That's how many composers back in the ages that if you're gonna see Bach, if you're gonna see Bartók, they were writing for their students pieces, and I like it very much because it is always something also very personal because they get their own pieces. And of course, I still gonna play on the piano. I'm gonna perform, and I don't know. I don't have so many plans regarding about the composition. What I know what I would like to write, but as I told, now I still don't know. There are things that might change, right? First, always idea for the composition. It always comes in my head. So the first, always the drafts that I always make, I make general on the paper, but sometimes if I have even phone with me, I'm just making just text. It can be text. I'm just writing. It doesn't need to be written in the notes, but I have to have some thoughts or this, something. Those are the particular like notes of my daily life, you know. Sometimes I also feel composition, it's like writing a diary through the notes, you know. Sometimes when I listen to my old pieces, I know actually what I was thinking about that. It's like watching someone has a photographs, yes? And it brings you a lot of memories. The composition is very similar for me. Whenever I hear some of my pieces, all of my memories go back. I exactly know when I composed that, how I was thinking. I'm most creative. There are things like when it's very quiet, you know, everything is sleeping or something. I feel that I'm because contact with music and also composing is something very intimate. Something like you have like you have dialogue with something, with music, with God or something. But this is dialogue, so this is very personal thing, you know. And I feel the best like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. this time kind of to compose. Yes, but it's very sometimes. Unhealthy, of course, right? But the most ideas these times are very refreshing. I feel, but I know it's maybe it might sound a little bit weird because, for example, Professor Penderecki, he loves to work at 6 a.m. wakes up and he has the best. It is the more. But I many times also try. You too, right? But I tried many times and for me it doesn't work. I think it depends on the personality. For me, it works mostly at night. Yes. So it's a very special movie for me. Thank you for watching and thank you Dennis for doing this video. So the first shooting of this interview was when I just came to the United States. So that was in Pittsburgh. So my beginning of my journey in USA, it's been 10 years ago. And now I want to say that my CD is coming up. It's called Union Square. That's a CD. It's published by Albany Records. And it presents mostly my chamber works composed after the Mass that was in the second interview in this movie. And the last piece from this album is dedicated to my son, and it's called Julku, Julku, Julku. It's for flute and harp. It's like a little lullaby.
dedicated to my son who was born 4 years ago. And I hope also you will enjoy this CD. And I want to now thank everyone, my friends, my colleagues, my performers, different organizations in New York City, as mentioned, also helping with the festival, and Polish organizations, performers, artists with whom I collaborated, also you, Dennis, for doing this video. And of course my family, my parents, my brother, my relatives, and also my wife, and everyone who also helped me in my journey here coming to the United States and now being settled. So the last thing I want to say in Polish, dziękuję bardzo.